Hey guys, this is Pastor Grant, and I'm bringing you an encouragement today as I continue asking questions about God and what comes into our mind when we think about God. Because, as A.W. Tozer says, that's the most important thing about us. Today, I want to ask you the question as we think about God, what do you think prompted God to create the world as He did, however many years ago? What was the thought that came into mind that said, I'm going to make a world that has mountains and forests and oceans and cats and monkeys and whales, but not one with unicorns? That probably wouldn't be the most ideal world, but one with humans who would glorify me and give me glory. Was it perhaps that he was lacking in something? That he was lonely? I don't know that we ever consciously think that, but sometimes I do think that in the dark recesses of our mind, there might be this idea that somehow we can add to God's glory. Because don't we say that we want to glorify him and enjoy him forever? And so are we adding to his glory? And did he make us so that he would be more glorious? That's a dangerous way of thinking about God because it puts him dependent on us for his happiness, for his glory. And God doesn't need us. There's something we call the independence of God. He's completely independent on his own. He doesn't need us for anything. I was born in 1974. Just to kind of illustrate this, I don't know this. I didn't look this up or anything, but anecdotally, all the pictures that my family has before I was born are black and white. All the pictures we have, for the most part, I mean, their wedding pictures were in color, so it might have been a bright day, right? It was a happy day, and so everything happened in color that day. After I was born, pretty much all the pictures are in color. So maybe they just got a color camera or whatever. I don't know. But sometimes I think we think of ourselves that way when it comes to God. That before he created the world, he was lonely and things were blah. And maybe he just needed to add some color to the universe. Add some spice and bring some happiness. Well, John 17:5, Jesus is praying the night before he is crucified, and he says this. He says, Father, glorify me in your own presence with the glory with which I had with you before the world was made. So a couple clues here. Number one, he says, before the world was made. That gives us an idea that before any of this came around, before we were here, before the oceans and the valleys and the whales and the cats or whatever else it was that I said were here, before that was here, he had glory. There's a glory that the Father had. But then the question still remains, what is that glory? What is he talking about the glory that he had with the Father? Well, I love it when the Bible does this. It answers itself. A couple verses later, it says that Jesus, as he's speaking to the Father, speaks of, quote, my glory, which you have given me in your love for me before the foundation of the world. So there again, you have the timestamp. Before the foundation of the world, before he created anything, you have the glory that the Father and the Son had together, but the glory was given to me in your love for me. And so we have this idea that before the creation of the world, God was not lonely. He wasn't lacking anything. There was this relationship that the Father and the Son had that was perfect. It was not marred with sin. It was a perfect love. And so then why did he create us? If he had a perfect relationship, perfect love, he didn't need anything, why did he create us? Jonathan Edwards writes a big, long book, and he suggests, and I think he's onto something here because all history and everything in the Bible seems to be pointing towards this, but he suggests that the Father and the Son had a perfect relationship, perfect glory before the world was created, but the Father created all things in order to present his Son with a bride. He loved him so much that he wanted to give him a bride. And so he brings the church to Christ. And we know that all history ends, Revelation tells us, with the wedding feast of the Lamb. Now, whether that's true or not, I mean, it seems like all those things. The Bible doesn't explicitly say that, but it seems to point towards that. We do know that God is completely independent and sufficient in himself before he created the world because of the glory that he had with the Son before the creation of the world. So he doesn't need the world. He's not dependent on it. He's not codependent on us and like he needs us for anything. In fact, Job 41:11 says that who has first given to me that I should repay him? This is the Lord speaking. Who's given to me that I should repay him? Whatever under the whole heaven is mine. And then Psalm 50, very familiar passage. There's a song that goes with this. For every beast of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know all the birds of the hills, and all that moves in the field is mine. It says, if I were hungry, I would not tell you. I don't need you to feed me. I don't need you for that. For the world and its fullness are mine. And this past Sunday, I preached from Acts 17, where Paul's in Athens, and he's talking to the Athenians about their gods that they worship. And he says, the God that made the world and all that's in it, he doesn't need you for anything. He's not served by human hands. And that's the way that we should approach God, the way we should think about God. I think that's going to do two things for us. I mean, all of this talk and why does this even matter and why have I been here for 6 minutes and 35 seconds listening to this? Well, there's two important things, two important applications. Number one, if we think of ourselves in such a way that somehow we can add to God and add to his glory, we might begin to think that God is dependent on us, that somehow he's served by us. I just got a notification I had to turn off there. That he's needy of our worship. And that's actually condescending towards God because it makes him dependent on us for our worship. And whether we mean to or not, sometimes we approach him with that mindset. But here's the thing. When we do have the proper perspective of God and our relationship to him, we do make him happy. It doesn't mean that we're adding anything to him, to his being and who he is, but he does take delight in us. There's an amazing verse in Zephaniah 3:17 and 18. For some of you, maybe it's your favorite verse. It says, the Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. Think about that. The God who's completely independent, he doesn't need us for anything. He knows your name, and he rejoices over you with a love song. Wouldn't you love to hear and know what that is? Well, just to keep these things into perspective, what comes into our mind when we think about God, we shouldn't think that somehow we're adding to God, but he does delight in us. May that be something that you delight in today, that the King of the universe is happy about you when we think right thoughts about him and when we ascribe to him the glory that's due his name, and we don't take it by somehow making him dependent on us. May you be encouraged by that today.